What's easy to use, takes excellent photos, and also offers astounding value for money? Apparently, this old Olympus camera that I'm dubbing the Grandpa camera. Originally released back in early 2005, the Olympus D545 Zoom, also known as the C480 Zoom elsewhere in the world, was meant to be a stylish camera that is perfect for those buying their first digital compact camera. This camera was another one passed down to me, so the value for money bit is quite true in my case. However, I don't know how well the styling has held up. It looks alright, I guess, but nothing overly exciting or premium here. There really isn't anything wrong with how the camera looks by any means, it just looks dated. It looks like an older digital camera that Gramps had in a drawer in the basement, which is exactly what it was. On the front is the 3x zoom lens with a 35mm equivalent focal length starting at 38mm, stretching to 114mm, with a fairly average variable aperture of 2.8 to f4.9. The built-in flash sits at the top, fairly close to the little bump grip of the camera. Across the top is an informational sticker, the power button, and the two-step shutter. This side is bare, and the grip side holds the battery compartment for two AA batteries, as well as a flap covering the USB and DC power connectors. On the bottom is a tripod mount with plastic threads, and is also where you will find the memory card door. The camera shows its age here as well, with the memory format of choice being up to 1GB of the now obsolete XD picture card. The rest of the controls and the LCD screen live around back. The 1.8-inch 85K dot screen seems tiny by today's standards, and also seems like it's pushed a little far to the edge of the camera. While not the highest resolution, the screen was still decent to use. Everything looked crisp enough with good colors and decent but not great viewing angles. It's not the brightest though, so visibility in sunlight or bright outdoor conditions wasn't very good. I honestly thought this was just going to be another basic, boring point and shoot, and expected not to really like it. While that first part is kind of correct, the more I used it while testing for this video, the more it grew on me. There are just little design decisions that make it very ergonomic and pleasing to use, even with just one hand. Everything is well laid out and spaced apart, easily accessible with your thumb with clear labels. Even though there isn't much of a grip, it's quite comfortable to hold with a little indentation for your thumb. Not just that, but around the front, Olympus even thought to add little tactile bumps just under the flash, so you know if you're covering it with your finger. A good idea considering how close that flash is. All in all, it's a very well built little camera, and it feels solid with no creaks or rattles. It's plastic, but it doesn't feel cheap. When powering on the camera, you're greeted with some great sounds of the time, as the lens auto extends, and in a couple seconds you're ready to shoot. Before we see the results though, let's look at menus and navigating the camera. Apparently, there are 19 different shooting modes in here somewhere, with 10 available on the mode dial. There is also a macro mode with 2 different options here. You can actually get quite close with this camera, about 2 centimeters. Mixed into the mode dial is the video mode, allowing you to record either 20 seconds at 30 frames per second or 41 seconds of 15 frame per second video, all at a resolution of just 320 by 240. Pretty standard for CCD point and shoot cameras from the mid-2000s. Something I would like to mention is that you can actually use the optical zoom while recording videos. Something I've come to learn isn't as common as I thought on older Digicams. For my test shots, I used the camera the way I assume most of the target demographic did. in auto. Something to note is the different menus for each mode on the camera. In auto mode, it's very simple, with not many options. However, when you switch to the other modes with the dial, new menus corresponding to that mode will open up. Even when not in auto mode, there aren't many menu options to choose from. There is a panorama mode in the menu, and you can also change the white balance here, though that is fairly limited as well. Everything is simple, making for an easy point-and-shoot experience. The photos that come out of this camera show a decent amount of detail, though you won't want to zoom in or crop too much since you only have 4 megapixels to work with. Finer, more cluttered details will suffer though, turning into a fuzz when zoomed in, like you see in these fine branches. There was a good amount of color too, despite most of the days that I took this camera out on being gray and flat. There are different quality settings for the JPEGs, with HQ or high quality being the default option every time you power on the camera. I usually switch to super high quality or SHQ when I remembered to do so. However, I personally couldn't tell much of a difference, so you could probably just shoot HQ and more than double the amount of pictures you can fit on the memory card. Starting at 38mm really isn't very wide on the wide end, but there was still some barrel distortion. When zooming into tighter focal lengths, the images look just as sharp, and that barrel distortion goes away fairly quickly. The camera did a good job with exposure overall, with almost all my photos being well balanced between shadows and highlights. While the sky was a bit bright in some photos, for the most part I didn't have any issues with blown out highlights or crushed shadows. There isn't any way of actually controlling ISO on this camera. It's all auto from 50 to 320. The camera did a good job keeping the ISO at low levels, with the majority of my shots staying at ISO 50, and the highest one being ISO 181. Being an older camera, high ISO performance wasn't really a thing, but you shouldn't have to worry about pictures being too noisy, though you will need decent light to keep the shutter speeds up. Indoor shooting was a little trickier, and getting an in-focus picture of cats did take a couple of attempts, but it is possible. The built-in flash does make this a little easier, though I personally tend not to use it. Overall, I would say that this is a solid little Digicam that can produce some pleasing results with very little effort. While this isn't my sharpest camera or with the best colors, and may not be my personal favorite camera, I did enjoy my time testing and using the Olympus D545. I personally wouldn't go out of my way to find a camera like this one, but I would still recommend picking it up if you come across one cheap at a yard sale or in a drawer like I did. That's going to be it for my video on the Olympus D545 Zoom. I hope you enjoyed the photos, and see you in the next one.